please welcome writer-director Florian Zeller and Laura Dern. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Florian, as we were heading here, I was telling you that I was fascinated by your cinematographer and the fact that with the camera work, you mirror the emotional state of the character. That I noticed that the camera is very steady. He's in control, and then we start changing into handheld camera. Can you tell us about that choice?
Oh, thank you for noticing this. It's true that we find, with Ben Smithard, who is the cinematographer of the film, we worked together to try to find a specific language for telling this story. And it's all about this frame, you know, very stable. And at some point when he's trying to, I mean, this is a man trying to fix situation, to control everything. And at some point you can feel that there is something that is starting to move or to lose a bit. And we use the hand camera.
Handheld.
Sorry for my English. In order to reflect what was going on, you know, in this character, meaning that he was starting to lose the control. And at some point, when they made the decision as parents to bring this boy home, we got back to this very stable frame. And of course, the tragedy happened out of the frame. You know, when you're trying to control everything, everything is happening out of it. And so we try to use the camera to represent this position when you're losing control, when you're experiencing powerlessness, because this film was about this position as a parent, you know, when you do not know what to do anymore, when you're trying hard, when they are loving parents, I would say, they are loving mothers and fathers, they are doing their best, and still it's not enough. So in a way, the frame was here to represent this loss of control.
Speaking of out of control, Laura, when we first meet Kate, she is in such a vulnerable state. She's full of anger. She's lost control of the situation. What was it like to start a character at that position?
Incredible. Incredible because the script that Florian and Christopher Hampton gave all of us was the most amazing gift of a map toward self, an invitation to know someone so intimately, their guilt, their shame, their vulnerabilities, and specifically Kate as a character, but in a way motherhood as a character, to start with the raw terror that you don't have the answers anymore, that you can't fix it, that you can't answer how to help your own child, is sort of where he invited us as an audience and myself as a character into what it feels like in this powerless state of motherhood. It was an amazing, both first scene in introduction to the film and also first scene to shoot, which Florian set up with no rehearsal. So it was an invitation into this hallway, which I'll let you speak to if you want, which was an amazing choice you made.
Yeah, Florian, that was one of my questions, that you come from the theater where a lot of rehearsal takes place, but in this film you chose to gather your actors and very little rehearsal. Can you tell us about that choice?
Yes, it's true. I come from theater, and not only I'm familiar with the process of rehearsing, but I do love these moments. I think it's so inspiring and exciting and joyful. But still, we made the decision altogether not to rehearse at all, because I think it was the opportunity for Is it me?
Hold on a second. Sean?
We just want to jazz it up a little bit,
Yeah.
guys.
So you see, this is what could happen when you have no plans. And this is what I was trying to look for in that movie, the truth. You can pretend, you know, you can fake, and now we are truly embarrassed. And I wanted you to see on screen something that was impactful because it was truthful. So it was about creating an atmosphere where these amazing actors could be connected truly to their own deep emotions. The reason why they wanted to be on board in the first place to that movie, the reason why they said, yes, I want to tell that story. There was a secret here, and I wanted the audience to feel that it was truth. It was not about just telling a story, it was about sharing emotions that we were familiar with. And so we didn't rehearse in order to be all of us without any protection, to try to be brave but honest, to take the risk to tell things that sometimes we don't want to face, but this is the truth, this is the situation we are going through now, this is the civilization we are in. We all felt that we are going through like a pandemic about mental health issues, and we needed to tell that story in the most honest way. So we made a decision not to rehearse, and every day to try to discover in the moment, on set, all together, in the now, the situation and the story we wanted to share with you. And for example, the first scene you just mentioned, the first scene of the movie, you remember it was on the landing. I really wanted to open that film, even though I knew it was a strange thing to open a film on a landing, but to me it was like, just with an image you understand everything about these characters, this man in between his previous life, his new life, and it's the first scene of the film, but it's not the first scene we shot. And for a few days we shot all the scenes in the apartment between Beth and Peter, meaning Vanessa Kirby and Hugh Jackman. So that after a few days, you know, it really became their space, it was their apartment, we were very familiar with it. And then we asked the great Laura Dern to join us. And the decision we made all together, we talked about that, remember, was for Laura not to know anything about the set, to discover what it was just in front of the camera. So I remember then, just before we said action, you were on the side listening to music just to be focused about your character and the situation, and suddenly the camera was on, you knocked at the door opened, and it was the real first time you saw what was just over there, the apartment, the furniture, his new life. And to me, you know, when I spent so many hours and so many weeks and so many months in the editing room, I remember when I was watching Laura's at that moment, you know, to see so many layers, so many contradictions, so many emotions about this woman trying to deal with the present, but to have to accept, you know, this new life. I mean, all the complexity of that situation was done because you knew nothing about
Correct.
the set.
Laura, tell us, what was it like for you in particular? The scene with you and Hugh at the restaurant it's a powerhouse scene, and you're playing so much subtext. It's a remarkable acting that you do in that scene. Can you walk us through, shooting that scene?
Thank you very much. I will say, when I read the script, it's one of the most flawless scenes I've read as an actor. I know Hugh felt the same way. A 10-page scene between two people with all of this history that they have to somehow bury in order to attempt co-parenting. And despite the pain, I had never read a scene where, particularly in this case, the scorned person, if you will, comes at it with such generosity. And it just broke my heart open to read on the page a woman saying to a man who had left for another woman, if you only knew how much I had loved you. Like that gift, in a way, to bring them back to what they built so that they can hopefully help save this boy. I just was so touched by it. And that there's so much you attempt, and yet still it's falling from your hands, and you can't have all the answers. I found it so all-encompassing, what it is to be a parent and an ex and a once lover, and so it was an incredible gift just on the page. But as Florian will also tell you, Hugh Jackman's, first of all, the nicest person anyone will ever meet. Let's start there. And also the generosity and the beauty that he brought, and because we hadn't rehearsed, but had been, because of the pandemic and this bubble together, and had shared so much together about what may have been the history of this couple, but also all of us have shared a lot as people and as parents. And so all those layers bring you to that moment, and just looking in his eyes and speaking our truth, but having a filmmaker supported by his cinematographer who wanted to capture the truth of two people's eyes without complication is such a tribute to storytelling and to words, but also to acting, to give actors that opportunity, as we all know, and I'm sure several actors here are like, that's such a rare blessing. So that was just one of the great experiences of my life. It was so beautiful.
Florian, I mentioned that I've seen all of your plays. Your scripts are maze-like. The narrative is very complicated, but in The Son, it's very linear. The narrative is simple, straightforward. Can you tell us about why The Son had to be in this simple, well, not simple, linear?
It is simple, you're right. Most of my plays, they look like mazes or labyrinths. I guess this is the way I think. But for this story, I really thought that it had to be linear, very simple, in order to reflect what was my approach, which was not to shy away from what I wanted to talk about, which is that pain, and not to try to do a gimmick about it, but really to try to look at it without shying away. This is something actually that I experienced in the first place on stage, because it was first a play, The Son, and when I did it in Paris, because I'm French, as
we
now
can
you
tell
know.
that you're French.
I was really, really moved, to be honest, to see the response of the audience, meaning that people were waiting, they were waiting for us after every performance to tell their own story, to share their own story. And it was a way to say, I know what you're talking about, because my daughter, because my son, because my uncle, etc., etc. And I realized almost physically that so many people know what it is about. So many people are dealing with this kind of pain, are struggling, and so many people are experiencing, as parents, for example, you know, this position when you do not know what to do anymore. And that's the reason why I really wanted to make that film, because I wanted to face, in a very straightforward way, this question, because I think that we need to speak about it. I think we need to feel comfortable talking about mental health issue. I think we need to feel comfortable watching films about mental health issue in order to have like a conversation about it, because the truth is that there is so much ignorance, but also so much shame and so much guilt and so much denial around these topics that I think we need to talk about it.
You made the choice, you spoke about the gunshot. The gunshot happens off screen. We hear it. Can you tell us about that choice?
Yes, it's true that there is a gun. There is a gun in that story, and I guess when you heard that there was a gun in that story, you knew that it would be a tragedy. But still, I didn't want to film the gun. I didn't want to represent it. And at some point, we hear that he's hidden behind the washing machine. And so the idea was just to use like this abstract image, the washing machine rolling and rolling. And at some point, you don't know exactly what it means, but somehow there is a connection with the idea of a danger and the idea of something is rolling like a tragedy, something you cannot stop. And because the whole point of that film is that I think that tragedy is preventable, and suicide is preventable if we use the right words, if we dare asking for help when it's needed, if we dare having the right conversations. So it was about telling what could be preventable in this case.
Correct. I'm glad you brought up the washing machine. There is, all throughout the movie, there's circles, symbols of circles, not just the washing machine, but throughout the apartment. Can you tell us about, my interpretation was that this cycle of trauma that just continues.
Yeah, it's true, and thank you for noticing it. It's called the sun, but it's about a mother and it's about a father. But at some point we understand that that father is also a son, and he's a son in pain, and he's a son who is dealing with his own past, and that's why that scene with Anthony Hopkins was so important to me, in order for the audience to understand that it was about, this circle of trauma and how to break that circle. And probably this is someone who is not capable to deal with the present because he's completely taken by his own past. And of course, to have Anthony Hopkins being such a cruel father, it's very helpful in that situation.
He's lethal in that scene. Laura, going back to the gunshot, you guys did not rehearse that scene. Take us there. You knew the gunshot was happening, but it wasn't rehearsed at all. Can you tell us about shooting that moment?
I can. What was beautiful was Florian was so specific about asking Hugh and I, despite what we probably knew could happen, to somehow escape the moment in our own reverie, in our own memory. And so he wanted that moment on the couch to be something where, despite our worry, despite our focus of him going down the hall and making the tea and everything that was happening, that in that moment of wanting to somehow be a family again, or capturing a moment when we used to go to the movies, that we would almost forget where we were and fall back into a nostalgic moment, even a romantic moment together, to be distracted ourselves. But genius to my right said, you know what, we'll shoot this one, but without the gunshot. So we could just focus on that reverie, and then of course the gunshot happened, and we had not prepared where we would run or how we would hear it. And what was incredible about it was, in not knowing it would happen, the time it takes to hear, to listen, to hear something, to get up, and to figure out where you're going, because we didn't know where the sound would be coming from, nor did we necessarily know what door Nicholas would be in. So all of it was discovered by us because it was in the moment, which was a real blessing for us as actors.
It was one take? I mean, the take that we see is the one take that you got.
Yes, there was only one take, because everything was there. You know, there is no reason to do several takes when you have everything. I mean, at least to me, on one take, you know, the surprise, of course, but the terror. Nothing was fake, and they had to deal with something they were not expecting. And as great actors and extraordinary human beings, to have to do something with it. You know, the intuition that it happened, it's already too late, but still you have to do something with it. And they made the decision to stand, to run, and this is tragedy. And there is no point doing another take. You know, they are the best, and it was there. I mean, to me.
Laura, tell us about working with Sam McGrath, who plays your son, first role. I'm blown away by the scene that you have with him where you tell him everything's going to be all right and he's falling apart. I mean, you two are two incredible virtuosos in that scene. Can you tell us about that one?
I mean, I'd love to speak mostly to his bravery, you know, that he poured his whole heart into it, and he trusted Florian so beautifully, and Hugh, and we luckily had real time together to bond and learn to trust each other and tell each other secrets and feel like a family in our own ways, and that was beautiful. But when you're on a set and you've never done it, and I mean, that scene, and also particularly in the hospital with this nurse and this doctor and this radical opportunity for exposing oneself and one's agony and the physicality of it. I mean, he continued to amaze me with his vulnerability. And I remember, I'll let Florian speak to how he cast him and the quality he was looking for, but I remember when I met him, understanding immediately why you would cast him, because it's an odd thing to meet such a genuine and tender boy, a boy, almost slight in figure, and yet menacing, because I don't know what's happening. And he had that nature about him, but I'll let you share your discovery of him and why.
Yeah, Florian, tell us how you cast.
I mean, it was at the end of the casting process. I should say maybe it started that process with Hugh, who, I mean, I was at the beginning of dreaming about, because everything starts with a dream when it comes to cinema. And I was dreaming, and I received a letter from Hugh Jackman. I mean, I say a letter, but the truth is that it was an email. But it was romantic at that time to receive an email from Hugh Jackman. I didn't know him, and he said, I heard you're working on the adaptation of The Son. He knew the play. And he said, if you're already working with an actor or in conversation with an actor, please forget my letter, my email. But if not, I would love to have 10 minutes with you just to let you know why I should be the one to do this part. And, you know, it means so much as an actor when you're capable and brave enough to express your desire, because it means that you're, I mean, to be honest, to be humble, and to be brave at the same time. I was really impressed and already moved by him. I didn't know him, so we met on Zoom, and it was just a general meeting. I was not planning to make any decisions, but after a few minutes, I really stopped the conversation and I offered him the role, because I felt strongly that what I felt through this letter, this email, I mean, his honesty, his courage, his humility was what he was truly, and that what was needed for that part. And I knew that he would be completely available to explore these emotions without shying away, with a lot of courage. And I knew that he was somehow, as a man, not only as an actor, but also as a man, and as a son, and as a father, he was connected deep down to these emotions. And this is what was so fascinating for me, is when we were shooting that film, to be in this position behind the camera, to watch Laura and to watch Hugh. It was as if they were really experiencing these emotions, as if they were really going through these painful moments. It was really special. You know, I've been working on theater for years and years, and I love actors. To me, it means the world. That's what I really love in life, to work with actors and to look at actors. And this time it was really, really impressive to me to see these two actors really going through these emotions with so much courage. And then I knew that he would be Hugh, that he would be Laura, that it would be Vanessa, that it would be Anthony, and I was looking for, sorry, my answer is very long.
Go ahead.
And I was looking for this young actor, and I knew that it would be someone I didn't know yet, because he was supposed to be 17 years old. And I received many, many tapes, and it was so exciting to just to know that somehow, somewhere, there was one actor, there was one face, you know, waiting maybe for it. And I remember that moment when I received that tape. You know, it took me like 2 minutes to know that he would be, that he was that character, because there was something about his fragility, but also his strengths that allowed him to be so fragile, and also something about his opacity. There is
Opacity.
Yeah, meaning that I was not trying to represent someone performing depression, you know, because it's a lot about hiding everything. He's someone who you cannot exactly tell what is going on, and I think that's faithful to the truth. You cannot tell exactly, and when you are such in pain, you are hiding everything. And I felt that he knew how to hide everything. And as an actor, it's about, you know, showing everything.
I just want to add, I'm so moved by listening to that. I shared with Florian, this is personal, but my son, who's 20, and his dearest friends came to see the film the other day, and it was so beautiful to hear their experience of it. And they loved the film, and it meant so much to them. But they were particularly touched by the fact that you chose Zen specifically, because they said it never looks like pain. Mm-hmm. And they said, we've all been through it. We've gotten that call in the middle of a night from a friend where we've had to call the police because the parents don't know it's happening, and they call us, and we're 15 years old, and we have to decide if it's real, if it's not real, because it never looks like an emergency. Right. And that was so profound to him. And the other thing, this group of boys, I listened to 5 boys in a car talking about, you know, what they thought of the son. It was amazing, from 18 to 21. And I also was so moved that they said, it's just so sad. We better figure this out now. We got to go to therapy. You guys, we need to go to therapy. And they're talking about getting therapy. And I said, well, what is it you want about therapy? And they said, it just was so sad that you knew when you watched Hugh Jackman walk out that he wasn't going to be able to leave his son because he was dealing with the sins of the father. And I was like, how do they know about the sins? He said that was that voice in him that said, I will never abandon my son like my dad abandoned me. And he made the choice based on the father he never wanted to be versus what his son needed. I thought that was so powerful that like 5 18 to 20-year-olds had captured that from your film. It was really powerful.
Florian, I want to ask you about the production design. The logic of the apartment is so instrumental in the film. The apartment itself seems to be oppressive, entrapment with the characters. Can you tell us about the apartment?
So we shot the film in a studio in London, pretending to be in New York. I should not say that because we worked so hard to not to reveal that we were in London. And then I said the truth. But what is amazing about, as you know, shooting in a studio is that you really have to question what you want to do because you can do everything. And in my previous film, The Father, we shot also the film in a studio in London, and we made a decision to stay in the same set, in the same apartment, because it was part of the story, and every film, every story requires something specific. And in The Father, it was about, creating like a labyrinth in order for the audience to experience what it could mean to be in that position. It was like a subjective experience, what it could mean to lose your own bearings. Here, because we said that it was like a linear story, the production design challenge was not the same. It was mainly about pretending to be in New York. And it was, but also to use, as we said, to use the set for creating positions, situations in comfort for the actors to experience the situations, as we said, with the first scene, to use a landing as a way to discover characters.
And tell us, I saw the play. In the play, the father, Anthony Hopkins, the role is not part of the story. This was written for the movie. Can you tell us about writing that scene and the fact that you call the character Anthony? All along you were writing for Anthony?
Yes, making a film is such a sentimental experience. And with Anthony, we did The Father, and it was a very intense journey, and I really wanted to work with him again. Again, I come from theater, and there is this notion of troupe. Is it an English word? Troupe. To be happy to share not only a film, but a journey with people you do love and respect. So I really wanted to work with him. And actually, when I finished the film, the script, he's the first one before anyone who read the script. I sent him to him, and I remember he called me back 3 hours after I sent the email, and he said, "Oh, I saw you send me an email," and I said, "Yes," and I said, "Oh, it's the script," and I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, I read it," and I said, "Already?" He said, "Yes, and I want to be part of it." So, what about? And he was already talking about his costume, So he's so committed, and what surprised me is that there was no difference between the father and the son, meaning that even though it's a small part, a small scene, it was the same amount of questions, desire, commitment, generosity. It was not counting the line, it was just being part of something bigger than himself, which is trying to share a story and to share emotions with you and with him. So it tells a lot about how great he is as an artist.
Mm-hmm. And I have to ask you about Vanessa Kirby, who's also terrific in the film. Tell us about working with Miss Kirby.
Yeah, I discovered her, like most of you, I guess, in
Pieces of
a Woman, and I thought she was extraordinary in it, and she's such an intense actress. I was very, very excited about the idea of working with her. And the process was so exciting and uncomfortable also, because we did it over COVID, the worst moment, meaning that it was when we shot it in England, as I told you, and it was when the whole country in the UK was pretending that nothing was going on anymore. But we had to pretend that, to be very, very careful. So we had to be very, like in a bubble all together. It was like such an intimate moment. And with the awareness that despite the difficulty, we had to find our path, to make it happen. And we were so grateful that despite all the difficulties, we were lucky enough to keep going, doing what we like and also what we think was needed, meaning to tell this kind of story. And Vanessa, but also you, Laura, and everyone on board, I feel very grateful still today about what happened, is that everyone was completely committed just to this idea of, despite everything, despite the difficulties, despite sometimes the fear, just to try to tell a story that maybe could help some people in pain.
And now, are we going to have the trilogy? Are you going to do The Mother? There is a play called The Mother, which he done.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I'm completely with the son now. We are sharing it with the audience, which is the whole point of making a film. So I'm completely in that moment without knowing what's next.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for being here. What an honor.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.